Recently, my cousin and cousin-in-law have been thinking about relocating to our state because of recent job opportunities, and we've hosted them in the past when they visited. The first time they stayed with us, before my son was born, my nephew seemed to develop a strong attachment to my wife and always wanted to be near her. He drew a picture of a heart and picked some flowers from our yard and gave them to her before they left, saying he loved her. My wife thought this was sweet and gently handled his crush by telling him she would always love him as his aunt. But she was sure he would find another girl to fill his heart soon. He told her no, she was his girlfriend. This weekend, they were staying with us again, and my nephew again wanted to be near my wife every chance he got. His mom and dad noticed and told him that because my wife now had to care for our son, she couldn't pay attention to him as much as before. He got upset telling us that she was his girlfriend and had a meltdown, which caused my son to start crying. When my wife got up to take our son to another room to calm him down, my nephew got up to follow and his dad had to forcibly restrain him from following them. I stood up to block the hallway into the separate room just in case he got away from his dad. Once they calmed him down, they apologized for his behavior and said they would keep better tabs on him. Here's the part where I may be the asshole. I told my cousins I didn't feel comfortable with my nephew being so possessive of my wife, and I know for sure she didn't. Especially since he seemed to be so jealous of our son. I told them I couldn't allow their son in our home until he learned to control himself and understand that my wife was not his girlfriend. I apologized but asked them to get a hotel room for the rest of their stay and not to visit us again unless they left my nephew behind with people they could trust and knew would care for him, while they searched for jobs in our state. They didn't say anything but looked saddened and went to the guest room with their son to pack up their bags. I guess they must have told my extended family what happened because my paternal grandmother called me this afternoon, telling me that I should have been more understanding and that I was wrong to ask them to leave. Am I the asshole? Technically, my cousin is my second cousin. My dad is an only child, so the cousin I refer to in my post is the son of my own dad's first cousin. My paternal grandmother and his paternal grandfather were siblings. I'm not sure if this is correct, but his autistic son would technically be my third cousin. The reason I refer to him as my nephew is because he's the generation after mine in our family tree, and it's less of a mouthful to refer to him as cousin X removed. A lot of people have posted that it's not correct to refer to him as my nephew, but to be frank, I don't care. And my family's never followed this traditional genealogy nomenclature. Without being specific, in the western state I was born and grew up in, it's not uncommon to refer to even close, unrelated adults as uncles or aunts. I call him my nephew because my cousin and I were close, and I still hope to have a close relationship with him if at all possible. Though I don't know how after this situation. Some have asked if I was jealous of my nephew calling my wife his GF. The first time, I thought it was amusing and was surprised that he had any romantic notions towards anyone, let alone my wife. Remember, in my mind he's my nephew and I never thought of him as anything other than a large kid because of his developmental delays and normal, for him, childlike behavior. Regarding the situation that happened this weekend, I was only concerned for my wife and son's safety. I didn't know how he would react and followed my cousin's lead, but wasn't about to let him get near my wife and son once they left the room. I don't know what was said to my paternal grandmother, but I don't want to react in anger and want to talk to my cousin once we've both had time to process what happened and calmed down. I'm 15 years old. I have a stepsister who is a couple years older than me, and she is really seriously disabled. I'm not sure what's wrong with her because no one ever wants to discuss it with me, but she's nonverbal, breaks her bones a lot, and has severe epilepsy and will have many fitting episodes. She also doesn't understand stuff. That's probably the easiest way to put it. She's just a human body with nothing inside. She's my stepmom's daughter. My stepmom married my dad 3 years ago and they dated only for a year before that. I don't know my stepmom very well and I don't really get on with her. We are respectful to each other, but I'm basically living with strangers because she's so busy with her daughter and my dad. I am always on my own and I used to hate it, but I'm used to it now. Ever since they moved in to live with us, life changed drastically for me because all the care now revolves around my stepsister. That's fine, I get it. But both my stepmom and my dad ask me to do things for my stepsister that I don't want to do and I resent doing. Stuff like staying home when I want to go to the mall with my friends. They're disappointed that I don't get her anything for her birthday with my very limited funds, etc. My own mom passed away when I was small, so I can't go and stay anywhere else, and all in all I'm just a lot more angry than I used to be, because they seem really disappointed whenever I say I don't want to do anything for her. Even stuff like feeding her, like, I don't want to sit there feeding her banana pudding and wiping her drool. I didn't ask for this. Anyway, she recently fell a few days ago and had a seizure for 8 minutes. She was taken to hospital and the doctors want to keep her in and look after her. I don't want to go and visit her. I remember seeing my mom in hospital before she died, and I just hate hospitals, and I sort of hate my stepsister, and I just don't want to go and visit someone who doesn't even know I'm there. My stepmom is really upset with me, and so is my dad. They haven't yelled at me or anything, but they are both being super cold towards me because I don't want to visit. My grandma, who lives in Canada, called me about the blue and told me it was okay. And I don't need to force myself to go to the hospital, so I'm assuming my dad has told her I'm refusing to go. He keeps pleading with me, but I keep telling him I'm not doing it. I told him hospitals remind me of mom, and he got even more upset and said my stepsister might die and I need to stop being so selfish towards my stepmom. My girlfriend and I have been together for about a year. Most everything is great except one thing. If I tell her I'm sick / not feeling well / hurt, she refuses to believe me. If I have a cold, she tells me I'm faking it until it goes away and then says, "See, you are fine." I'm rarely sick, so it's never been a major issue. But she has zero sympathy when I'm sick. She grew up with hypochondriac parents who were always sick with something, often self-diagnosing themselves with fatal maladies. She has limited contact with them, and the time I met them, I was told by them that they didn't have long left to live. I get it, growing up in that household must have been awful. But what happened on Sunday just sent me over the edge. Girlfriend and my sister wanted to check out this event, and we were all supposed to go. I woke up with excruciating back pain and could barely breathe. Girlfriend got so mad at me for ruining this that she wouldn't speak to me. As she was about to leave, I asked her not to leave because I thought something was wrong. She said no and left. I threw up in my bed and eventually called my parents. I was too embarrassed to call 911. And my mother and brother hauled me to the hospital. I was whisked back, and after 20 minutes I was diagnosed with kidney stones. Fentanyl and gravel, and I had a CT scan and then went for a procedure to bust the kidney stones. 5 hours later and I was laying on my parents' sofa in a haze. I have never, and hope to never, feel pain like that again in my life. I was sure I was going to die. The attending in the told me it's worse than childbirth and that they've had it before, too. I didn't text my girlfriend throughout because I really didn't have the strength or foresight. I was drugged up and uncomfortable. My sister found out that I had been in the emergency room, and soon after my girlfriend called me. She was pissed off I didn't call her. Then I reminded her that I begged her not to leave as I thought something was wrong. She got quiet and eked out an apology. I got furious and said something rather nasty things, unsavory things. In fairness, I was on dope, still sore, peeing blood, and felt like someone had punched me in the gut. Standing was incredibly painful. I needed to take 2 days off of work and school. I rested in bed, and the only thing you can think is the person who should have been there didn't even believe me. She's texted me this week a formal apology and wants one in return for saying nasty things to her. I've been avoiding her texts / calls. I've felt like shit this week and picked something up in the So I laid low, took a few days off work and relaxed. She wants to meet tonight and talk about everything, but I'm still so mad I don't know if I should hold off seeing her. Is this as big a transgression as I feel like it is? Am I blowing this out of proportion because I felt so shitty? I just am so annoyed and angry. Girlfriend didn't believe me something was wrong, and I wound up in the with kidney stones and needed a procedure. She was mad that I didn't call her. I was too doped up, and then when I blew up at her she felt bad. I'm still mad at her. 6 years ago my son Matthew had a daughter with his now ex-wife Josie. I have always thought of Josie as my own daughter, so when they divorced 7 years ago due to my son cheating, I was conflicted and disappointed. Josie wasn't particularly close with any of her family, so my husband and I naturally took them in. Josie was an angel. She had insisted that we didn't have to lift a finger more than before we had taken them in, and though she was hurt, she kept civil around Matthew. My husband and I held a huge hand in raising their daughter Ruth, because Matthew remarried less than a year later and now has a 4-year-old son after disowning Ruth. 2 years ago my husband was diagnosed with lung cancer. It was hard on everyone, especially Ruth. They were extremely close. She told him about her girlfriends and boyfriends before anyone else and has always wanted him to be the one to walk her down the aisle at her wedding. Matt rarely ever visited and didn't answer our calls, often saying that we had other kids, so it wasn't like my husband was dying lonely. Last night Matt stopped by to talk about inheritance. He never mentioned Josie nor Ruth and hinted that he thought he should get more inheritance than his siblings the entire time. My husband and I shared awkward looks until he decided to cut in. He explained that everyone would get a piece, but he'd focus more on Ruth and Bonnie, one of our other grandkids. Matt got angry and said that Ruth was just a bastard and that his son deserved more than her. My husband got furious after that and left the room saying that he wouldn't include Matthew at all. Matt yelled back and turned to me saying that Ruth wasn't worth it because she'd just grow up to be a whore like her mother. I told him that I'd rather have her mother as my daughter than him as my son and insisted that he leave. I'm getting phone calls from Matt's wife and family friends saying that my husband and I overreacted, and he was just angry that we were playing favorites. To clear some things up, Josie did not cheat on Matthew. Josie and Matthew met later in college and Josie was known as a party girl. Before that, Ruth isn't the product of an affair, but we are planning on getting a DNA test because what Matthew said has gotten under Ruth's skin. She was at the house when this occurred and overheard it. When it came to taking in Josie and Ruth, we didn't hesitate because Josie is not from here. She and Matt lived in another country until he moved them here a few months before he got caught cheating, and they had nowhere else to go as Josie was a stay-at-home mom. I had no intentions of choosing Josie over Matt then and now, and I never discouraged Matt from visiting. I tried to make it very clear that we weren't picking and choosing when we took Josie in. We just wanted her and our granddaughter to be safe and have a good home.